None of us here, amen, amen, there's times in our life we can point out where there have been weaknesses that maybe surprised us. Elisha is at the top of his game spiritually in our text. He's hit 5 home runs. He's preached a sermon of not fluttering between two opinions and united a divided nation. 1. 2, he challenged 450 prophets of Baal and won. 3, he praised once. Fire comes down from heaven, consumes the altar, the sacrifice, the water, all that. Praise again. Water opens up, or the heavens open up. Rain comes out of heaven. 4th thing, he outruns Ahab's chariot to Jezreel. The 5th thing he did here, he executed all the prophets of Baal. So these are some major victories. Can you say amen? These are some times he can look back on in his life and say, you know what, God moved and God helped me. And how many knows we all need home runs and we all need victories in our life? Amen. We all need moments that we can look at and say, God moved for me in this area. You know, there's nothing greater than knowing that God stepped into the middle of our problem, opened the door for a pay raise, gave us dominion over sin that we've been struggling with, gave us stability in our marriage, healed in the area of our body, whatever it might be. But there's nothing better than being able to testify on that. God moved here and God moved there. God met a need. And I rejoice, amen, with every one of you every time I hear that God has done something in the church. But I'm not naive either. I'm not naive to think that living for God is all home runs and victories. Again, thank God for all the victories, but listen, there's the other side. In our text, chapter 19, verse 1, Ahab tells Jezebel all that Elijah did. All of a sudden, this Elijah's world here is turned upside down. He becomes fearful, the Bible says. He runs, he leaves his disciple behind, and becomes suicidal. Verse 4, he sat down under a broom tree and prayed that he might die. Now, this is going from high to low very quickly. Amen. He's, again, just a day earlier, the top of his game. Major victories. He's testifying. No doubt all of Israel is, giving praise to God for these powerful miracles. But here the very next day, he's experienced something that he's probably never experienced before. Amen. So it's something to take a look at here. Amen. Thank God for all the victories and all the scriptures that give us hope. Deuteronomy 32:30, 1 shall chase 1,000, 2 shall put 10,000 to flight. Philippians, Paul says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Amen. But we all have to learn this morning how to deal and how to process failures. Amen. And there are 3 things I believe involved in processing failures rightly this morning. 1, that is understanding God's forgiveness. 1 Kings 19. An angel twice bakes a cake. This is after Elijah has ran. He's failure. He's ran. He's left his disciple. He's laid under a broom tree. He's prayed, God, just let me die. Twice an angel bakes a cake, wakes him up, eat the cake, drink some water. You're going to need strength for your journey. Verse 8. Elisha is brought to Mount Sinai here. Mount Sinai is the mountain of God. This is where Moses had heard the voice of God out of the burning bush. This is also the place where Israel received the 10 commandments of God. Mount Sinai is probably the most holy place outside the Holy of Holies in the temple in the Old Testament. And in this time of failure, God calls Elijah up to this place. He didn't cast him out, forget it, throw him to the side. But God's bringing him up to the mountain of God here. Now, this is God's most holy place again. God's forgiveness is amazing. It could be said by many that Elijah probably deserved at this point to kind of be forgotten for a moment. because he really did let a lot of people down at this moment. But God's forgiveness is amazing. Second thing we have to process here, see, is that God speaks to Elijah. 1 Kings 19, verse 9. Said that there he went into the cave and spent the night in that place, and behold, the word of the Lord came to him and said to him, what are you doing here? Now, I want you to notice what God is not saying. He's not saying, Elijah, how could you have done this? Elijah, you've embarrassed me. You're a failure. You've run from Jezebel, the words of Jezebel. God could have said, you know what, again, just forget it. I'm getting somebody else. I don't want to ever use you again. But God's not saying any of that to him. God simply says to him, Elijah, what are you doing here? Amen. We can look at another failure. Peter. The Bible says denies Christ 3 times. When Jesus gets with him, he didn't, how could you deny me or anything is that? He simply said, Peter, do you love me? Even the third thing we see here is God's redirection. 1 Kings 19, verse 15. Then the Lord said to him, go return on your way to the wilderness of Damascus. And when you arrive, anoint Hazael as king over Syria. Also you shall anoint Jehu king over Israel, and Elisha you shall anoint as prophet in your place. Now I know failure seems like the end of the road, but it's not here. How many know God is the author of hope? In Elisha's redirection, he anoints Hazael king over Syria, Jehu king over Israel, and Elisha as a prophet. So through God's forgiveness, God's speaking, God's redirection, Elijah has a hope that he had never had before. So in times of failure, amen, we have to process these things. God's not like us in that sense. God doesn't just, when we fail each other, when we fail somebody, many times we just kind of want to push it to the side. Or push that person to the side, but God's not like that this morning. God's a merciful God.
Amen.
Maybe you fell this morning. Maybe fears overwhelmed you, and you ran. You did something that hurt your testimony like Elijah. Can I tell you, God's a restorer. He's a healer. He's a forgiver this morning. Your failure is not the end of the road, even though it might look like it. So secondly this morning, God's forgiveness brings renewed strength and focus. Elisha has been forgiven. God has spoken to him, redirected him, and now we're going to see Elijah's back in the scene. 1 Kings 21. Look at verse 17. It says, then the word of the Lord came to Elijah the Tishbite, saying, arise, go down to meet Ahab, king of Israel, who lives in Samaria. There he is in the vineyard of Naboth, where he has gone down to take possession of it. Verse 19. You shall speak to him, saying, thus saith the Lord, have you murdered and also taken possession? And you shall speak to him, saying, thus says the Lord, in the place where dogs lick the blood of Nabal, dogs shall lick your blood, even yours. Verse 23. And concerning Jezebel, the Lord also spoke, saying, the dogs shall eat Jezebel by the wall of Jezreel. The dogs shall eat whatever belongs to Ahab and dies in the city, and the birds of the air shall eat whatever dies in the field. Now think about this. This is a pretty bold move here. He's back on track, amen. He is. This is pretty bold, amen. These are the people that he had run from. These are the people that had put fear in his heart. He had ran, but here he is now. He's speaking very powerfully. You notice Elijah is not reveling in the past here. There's no sign of disparaging here. How many knows you got to move on? If you failed, amen, and God's forgiven you, God's restored you, you can't revel in the past. You can't live in self-pity. You can't live in condemnation, but you have to move on. And this is what Elijah is doing here. He is moving on. You have to, get this around your mind here. You know, the Bible says there's no condemnation in those that are in Christ. Now, I want to give a side note here. If you know somebody that has failed and repented, you should never bring their failure up again.
Amen. Come on.
I know some people that seem to enjoy bringing up the thought of, oh, I remember when you failed.
Come on.
They may not say it in words, but they will give look. They will make statements. That's not God this morning.
Amen.
When God forgives and God redirects and God restores, God forgets the failures. And listen, if we're going to, do a work for God, we're going to have His mind this morning.
That's right.
See, the truth is, Elijah became more stronger in the Lord after his failure. Elisha's early ministry was all about the big and the loud. Fire falling from heaven, outrunning the chariot, executing the prophets here. 1 Kings 19, when Elisha was in the cave, God showed him that ministry and serving wasn't all about the big and the loud, but it's more about simply hearing the voice of God. Amen. See, too many times we get in the big and the loud. Man, if I can get in the biggest ministry, the loudest ministry, if I can get in the most popular, I can really do something for God. Look at verse 11. Then God said, go out and stand on the mountain before the Lord. And behold, the Lord passed by in a great and strong wind towards the mountain and broke the rocks in pieces before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind, and after the wind an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake a fire, and the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire a still small voice. So it was. Then Elijah heard it. He wrapped his face in his mantle and went out and stood in the entrance of the cave. Suddenly a voice came to him and said, what are you doing here, Elisha? See, too many times we hear God speak, or too many times we don't hear God speak because we're so focused on the big, the mountains splitting, the earthquakes, the wind, the fire. But here it is. The Bible said God finally brings Elijah to the place where Elijah is able to hear his voice. And when Elijah does that, he wraps the mantle around his face, walks out. God speaks to him again. What are you doing here? God begins to minister. But too many times we miss God because we're always looking for the big. Amen. Instead of just having an ear for the voice of God. God, speak to me, God. It's like, just give me the big, God. See, every one of us need to learn how to hear the voice of God. James chapter 1, verse 2. James says these words, my brother, count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testings of your faith produce patience. But let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect, complete, and lacking nothing. Now, James is not saying here, celebrate having trials because they're difficult. James is not saying, hey, run around the church and say, I'm short on finances this month. He's not saying run around the church and say, you know what, we're really going through it in our marriage. He's not saying that, but he's saying, listen, there's something about trials and difficulties that strip away the flesh and cause us to get real with God, get before God. And in those moments, God can work things out of us that produce godly things like patience. And he says, making us perfect, complete, spiritually lacking nothing. James just went through a few things, and he said, listen, take advantage of these times, these difficulties, get before God, and see what God can do here. See, Elijah was a different man, a better man, actually. After his failure, he becomes more godly. 1 Kings 21.